Hello and welcome to the video. This is a video about this brand new product from Team Black Sheep. This is the TBS Mambo. This is what they're calling a full-size radio, although compared with lots of radios on the market, things like the Radio Master TX16S, this is actually a much smaller, more compact unit. Now, I was one of the lucky ones. I've had this for about 3 months, so I've been desperate to talk about it, and it's finally just been released, so I'll put a link down below. So this video is standard stuff, but what I'll do is I'll put time codes a little bit longer than I was expecting, because I was fortunate enough to get Trappy on a Skype call, and we talked about the radio and asked him some questions about where this came from and what's inside. This is not like the Tango series of radios, which has Crossfire inside. This has TBS TRACER. Again, I'll put links below to the TBS TRACER stuff. TRACER, you can think of it like a 2.4 gigahertz version of Crossfire. So it has all the good stuff that Crossfire does with the Lewis scripts, the telemetry, all that jazz, but it doesn't have the super long range that Crossfire does. So enough of me banging on, let's get on to the Skype chat with Trappy so he can explain a little bit more about it, and then let me show you the close-up of the radio, show you how the switches and pieces are. Caveat, and we're going to cover this in the session in a moment with Trappy, this is a pre-production test unit, this is mine, and a couple of things have changed, but it's still worthwhile. It's close enough to the final production version that's worthwhile me giving you a closer look after the chat. So here we are in Skype, and for those of you who don't know, this is Raphael, or as everyone knows him in the hobby, Trappy. Say hello, Trappy.
Hello.
Hello. So a big thank you to Trappy for spending this time to kind of explain about how this thing has come about, as I just explained in the introduction. If you hang around, again, time codes down below, I will kind of give you a close-up view of this thing. Now this is something that I have had, lots of us have had actually, who've been testing it for probably about 3 months. So let's start at the top of my question list. Why create a fuller size radio? Because you've had the Tango 1, which although it was a game controller style, was a pretty chunky beast. Then you brought out the Tango 2, which I'm a massive fan of. Loads of people love that. And then you've gone and brought out, you've called it a full size radio, but it's actually much more compact than a lot of the full-size radios, things like the Radio Masters and stuff that we're using. What on earth possessed you to bring out another radio?
Well, it's when we launched the Tango 2, we caught a lot of flack for releasing something that would normally be considered like a toy or a gamepad style radio. And the size was just a put off for many people. So eventually, it turned out great, and everybody loves the Tango 2. You know how it goes. But the seeds were kind of sown at the launch date for the Mambo to make another radio that's still compact, because FPV pilots, they have a lot of stuff that they want to carry around. So yeah. It still has to be in a certain size and ruggedness factor, I would say.
Yeah, I noticed you've not put any switches on the top. There's
yeah.
not a lot to catch if you put it in a bag with this thing.
We've tried to minimize the catchability
right.
in your backpack, but a lot of people were saying that they prefer a full size radio just over how it feels in their hands. And the way that that they can rest it against their belly when they're flying FPV. Yeah. I have a big belly, so the Tango works just fine, but some people are more skinny, I guess, and they have problems reaching their abs with the remote control resting. Yeah. So these were kind of the 2 or 3 main complaints about the Tango 2, next to the features that a full-size radio normally has that you have to do without on a gamepad style radio, such as trim buttons, a screen that you can read from miles away, and those kind of things. So and the switches for planes and whatnot.
Yeah, because the switches on this it all feels like a much bigger radio. However, I have noticed you've done a couple of cute things. Like, for example, the gimbals are quite far. Its eyes are kind of pushed to the side, which actually makes it, with its thinner size, actually really nice for thumbers and pinchers, which a lot of radios I've looked at recently, they're great for thumbers. So if you've come from a Xbox or a PlayStation, then like me, then brilliant. But if you're a pincher, a lot of the modern radios, it's not really designed for that. Whereas the ergonomics for this seem like you've thought that out a little bit. Was there any reason why that you've thought of the pinchers of the world?
Well, I'm a pincher,
Well,
or a
okay, that
hybrid
explains
pincher,
it.
so that explains one thing. And the the Tango One had great feedback in terms of ergonomics, and it was because it had a wider stance, just due to its size. That was one thing, and the second thing is how it wrapped around the palm of your hands.
Yeah.
And the thickness of it all. So if you actually if you like import this into a CAD program, and you look at just this part, this is the Tango One, basically with the screen removed and
Oh,
squeezed.
I can see. Yeah, and then squooshed together in the middle. Sorry, so using highly
Yeah,
technical terms like squooshed this early in the video.
yeah.
I guess the other thing is, I mean, we're going to talk about this in a minute, but inside this is a different radio system from what's in the Tango 2 as well, right? So you've elected to use something else, but I'm guessing also the fact that you've kind of designed and built the radio means that some of the latencies that you've got to go through inside the radio to get from the sticks out to the receiver, you've been able to optimize a little bit because you're in control of the whole thing. I mean, was that part of what you were looking at? Because I know that's been something we talked about with the Tango 2.
Yes. So it's actually it's less of a problem now with a CRSF v3 coming out, but for the tracer, in terms of percentage, the latency drop that you get from using a dedicated radio versus a module in a radio is vastly improved over the Tango 2. So whereas on the Tango 2 you would have maybe 2 to 5% drop in latency, on the Mambo it's 10-15% drop in latency, just because the latency is smaller to begin with, and the amount that you cut out is a fixed amount.
Fantastic. So you mentioned CRSF v3. I wasn't going to mention it because I didn't know if we were in here. If you are watching this video and you want to know about what it is, what it gives you, make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, because Trappy and I are going to do another video in several releases time when we can talk about the entire system. Because let me put it this way, there's some really cool stuff in CRSF v3, but I can't talk about it yet. So let's talk about as well for this thing. Why is it taking so long for us to have this video? Because myself and lots of other pilots that you kind of shipped it to play with, we've had it for probably about 3 months, and we've been kind of waiting to do this. I know lots of other people have been having problems with supply with China, both price and availability of raw materials and chips. What was the reason for the delay in this case?
It wasn't that. If you hold it up, you can see the differences between mine and yours. So you'll notice that the click wheel here, or the scroll wheel, has changed slightly.
I gave that feedback. I'm not a fan of this, so thank you for doing that.
Yes, exactly. So we were listening to the feedback, and that requires a retooling.
Right.
What also requires retooling is, I don't know if it's visible here, but the texture here has changed slightly. So basically the texture that you have on the edge right now has moved to here, and we've gone even one step rougher on the edge of the case.
Right, because actually the one here is not bad. It has a nice texture, but it's those situations where your hands aren't completely dry, or the weather isn't perfect. I guess it just means that for those of us who aren't using lanyards, it doesn't slip out your hand.
Yeah.
Cool. So I also guess there's been quite a few firmware updates over the last 3 months. I don't know how much you want to talk about that, but as pilots playing with it, we've kind of seen those iterations come through. Was that part of it as well? Because I'm guessing you identified and got rid of lots of weird stuff that we were playing with as testers.
Yeah, I mean, there's always bugs expected, and when we launched with the Tango 2, we had some issues early on, and we kind of wanted to let it age,
Right,
and see if there's any quirks coming out like 2 to 3 months later, because there was only a handful of test pilots, right? So the amount of edge cases that get tested in the wild are fairly limited.
yeah.
So letting it simmer for 2 or 3 months, we felt would be a good time, and it also gave us time to perfect the production process here. And this is actually manufactured in Hong Kong,
Okay, cool.
which
Could you?
is still China, but it's a different facility.
So, why did you put Tracer in this? So, for those of you who haven't already spotted, this is inbuilt Tracer in this. Again, go and watch my chat with Trappy quite a few months ago now, where we talked about what Tracer is. For those of you that don't know what Tracer is basically the Crossfire system, but running over a 2.4 gigahertz link rather than a 868.915. All the same stuff is there. The Lewis script works the same. The telemetry works the same. The antennas are teeny weeny compared with Crossfire, but it still actually gives you a bloody long way to fly if you want to fly beyond line of sight, if it's legal where you're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
But you've kind of gone for that in here. Now, if I've been completely honest with you, I've been a Crossfire pilot for ages. I love Crossfire. If I was coming into the hobby now, I would probably go with the Tracer system. Just because I don't do the 40, 50 kilometer flying. That's just so not possible where I am. But what was the reason for not giving us a larger radio with Crossfire? Because we have got the JR Bay at the back, right? So we can snap Crossfire in. But why did you go with a new system rather than the one that we all know and love?
Well, this is the main reason. So our assumption was, if you have the Tango, then you like the compact form factor, and this is not going to be the most interesting radio for you. If you like full-size radios, then you probably have a Crossfire module plugged into the back of it. Right. So this basically gives you an option to get a full-size radio with Tracer included for a relatively good price. Like cheaper than you could get any kind of remote control plus Tracer modules combined, and still use your existing drones on Crossfire.
Right. Okay. So basically, it's because the majority of the Crossfire users we're already out here. We've already got the modules. We've already got the kit and invested. So this, I'm guessing, is more of a net new pilot radio. So someone coming in who just wants to kind of get that technology. Okay, that kind of makes sense, because I actually really like the form factor, and I love the fact that the top of it's clean. So because I always am worried when I put the bigger radios into the case, you're always catching the top switches, and you're always hitting the antenna. And there's only so many operations that those kind of things can do and get bounced around. So that's okay. That makes sense. So the other one for me is that when I turn it on. Let me just see if it's going to...
Welcome to Mambo. Throttle warning.
Let me just put the throttle down. That helps. There we go. Welcome to Mambo. So this at the moment isn't full OpenTX. And it's something that I know with things like the Tango 2, it's shipped with, I think it's Freedom TX that you guys use, isn't it? Is the fork of OpenTX. Now, lots of stuff online at the moment about EdgeTX and how it's the new flavor of Coke and it's better than classic Coke. So is this, when we get official support from this, is this going to be an EdgeTX supported radio, OpenTX, or a bit of both? Who are you kind of backing?
So it ships with Freedom TX in the first iteration. However, we are pretty much completed with the merge into OpenTX. So back when we launched Tango 2, we announced that Freedom TX, it always had an expiry date, or it shipped with an expiry date. It was not supposed to be an alternative to OpenTX. Yep. And the reason why we did the Freedom TX route is a lot of the manufacturers that are releasing radios right now, they have unofficial support from OpenTX, which is kind of the same thing, right? So they have to make their own private builds and put them on their website for download. And we felt that with Freedom TX, we could at least brand it in a way that if there were any bugs in the Tango 2 systems, that OpenTX, wouldn't get bothered with it. Yep. So that's why we had the Freedom TX. It's basically just a private build of OpenTX, and this is going to be coming out. The OpenTX version or the compatibility it's pretty much done. As far as I know, OpenTX has one more release that they want to put out, and then the next one is going to have Freedom TX built in. So at that point, Freedom TX will be deleted, and only OpenTX will ship. As far as EdgeTX, I don't know. That's up to them whether they want to support it. However, if it's OpenTX compatible, it automatically becomes EdgeTX compatible.
Fantastic. That's great to hear, because one of the big things that I know that I've struggled with is the fact that because it isn't officially supported in OpenTX and hence the configurator, copying models from other radios that you may have that you're trying to retire in favor of your new TBS radio, it's a little bit more complicated. So the fact it's going to be supported by OpenTX is just great. Again, I'll put a link below if you want to look at my video about how you copy models between. It's actually dead easy, and Companion does all the hard work for you. So the fact it's going to be OpenTX gets a big thumbs up from me. I'd kind of just say personally as well, thank you for making a radio that has bloody trims on it as a fixed wing pilot that sometimes doesn't use a flight controller. I know lots of quad pilots, wonder what these are. That is a joke, by the way, but for us fixed wing pilots that need to click the trims. So thank you for doing that, because a lot of the compact radios these days seem to be made, even fuller size ones, definitely seen with the multi-rotor and flight controller people in mind. Looks like there is a trader port at the bottom, because I've not seen the final manual as we're making this. I'm kind of playing with this. We have a USB port at the bottom that I think is for charging, because it seems to work like that.
It's not a trainer port. It's for your earphones.
Okay.
We do have provisions for wireless trainer compatibility built into the radio, but that's something that's going to be released at a later point in time.
Okay, so watch this space. There are plans, because you're a little tinker. You tend to put loads of stuff inside your product, like the Wi-Fi antennas in everything for the cloud, and not tell anyone about it, and then we just find out.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Next one I want to talk about then is antenna alignment, because obviously this is this has a very smooth top. There's no external antenna. With things like the Tango 2, the external antenna was rotatable. So for those of us who like wings with vertically aligned crossfire Immortal T antennas, it was great. What's the deal with the antenna in this? How does it work with the fact it's hidden away inside the radio compared to the radio, the external module that has like a separate big whippy antenna?
So you have two options. The first one is the built-in antenna, which is basically the TBS Diamond antenna migrated to 2.4 gigahertz by ID Crazy, or Video Aero Systems, as he's known corporately.
Yeah, VAS.
But the second option is to get a SMA extension. So there's a UFL socket inside the PCB, and there's a little hole on the top, or it's not really a hole; it's a marking on top.
Yeah, you can see, it's like a. Yeah, it looks like it's a problem with the casting, but it's actually just to show you where to put. Because actually, I've just realised these are the things. I've never used these, by the way, but they were in the kit for testing, which I probably shouldn't tell you that I haven't tested them. But anyway, but that's the external antenna, and that is the adapter that you can use. So what's the orientation of the antenna in this?
It's horizontal.
I guess it has to be, doesn't it?
It has to be, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So if you're going to mount your antenna on your models, horizontal alignment for your trace system is probably going to give you the best. But if you want flexibility,
the tracer receiver is a diversity receiver, so it doesn't really matter too much. So 45 degrees offset, and you're fine.
Yeah. I get told it's not 45 degrees, it's 90 degrees. Well, I mean 45 degrees. Yeah, but I'm with you. I say the same thing, and then people pull me up. It's not 45 degrees, it's 90 degrees. You're absolutely right. I'm talking about away from vertical. But anyway, that's just me. Okay. Now, there is also, again, there's also something we need to talk about antennas and sensitivity and range, but we'll cover that in the CRSF v3 video. Again, stay tuned for that one. Again, I just wish I could talk about this stuff. So a couple of things have changed then from my demo unit. Let's kind of finish the chat about that. Obviously the rotating control, I think there was lots of feedback. I think most of us who had the unit kind of fed back it was, and it's not that the control is bad, it's just that the serrations aren't particularly harsh, so just rolling it with your thumb, it's sometimes a bit tricky to catch. What kind of other things have you tweaked apart from that and the finish on the plastics?
I think the only last part that we did is we added this finger stop here for your pinky finger or your small finger, whatever,
Oh,
however you
okay.
do it.
Yep. To stop it slipping in your
Um,
hand. Yep.
yeah, so that it holds better in your hand. And as far as I remember, that was the gist of it. There were some changes on the PCB, like different,
Yeah.
value
Revisions and
capacitors or something, but that's boring.
yeah, fantastic. So basically, I can continue to use this kind of test unit without being laughed at. Is that what we're saying? It's kind of almost the same.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you have one of five, so I guess it's valuable.
Well, you didn't sign it, so maybe
Oh,
the next thing you
right,
send me, you can sign it.
right.
Cool. Okay. Well, I think wasn't there talk about a kickstand as well that you were going to do? I heard you
Um,
mentioned that in the past.
so at the launch, we will have two versions. One will be this,
Right.
and one will be this.
Okay.
So if you can see, the color is slightly different. It has and there is a different logo on it as well.
Okay. Right.
So this here is the Mr. Steel or Ethics edition of the radio, and it comes fully kitted out with all of the modifications that Mr. Steel usually does to a radio. So that includes a kickstand
Right. Okay. Cool.
at the back. It includes we call them crown jewels,
Right.
the stick ends. It includes a full set of red and black
Covers.
switch covers
Yeah.
or switch condoms. I don't know what they're going to be called. And so basically, you could, like, this here is my arm switch. So I've marked this one here red. Do not touch during flight. And it's a slightly different font here for the design, and we have fitting with the gunmetal color scheme. We have gunmetal grips here on the side.
Okay.
So these were the modifications that Mr. Steele wanted to have done to the radio, and this one here will be selling at $190 versus this one here at $130, I think.
Fantastic. That's great. Trappy, thank you so much for that. That's been a great. Stay tuned. We'll do a quick overview of the radio. I'll show you mine. Again, be aware that the radio I have here is a test pre-production unit, and the things I'm about to show you, with the exception of the stuff that we've just covered, is a little bit different. But everything else looks like it's the same. So let me show you what I've actually got here. So we'll start at the top. We have quite a featureless top. We have that little different style of plastic that to show you where you need to cut out for the antenna mod. Again, I've been using mine with the internal antenna and it's been working fine. Just be aware that when you're flying around, obviously it's kind of cradled in your hands, so you have got your hands at the side as well. Having the external antenna might be better if you're flying in challenging conditions. In terms of the switches, we have a 2-position switch and a momentary switch at the top. Then we have all 3-position switches for the other 4. 2 of them are slightly longer, and the switches do actually feel nice. 2 rotary controls, no sliders on this, but the 2 rotary controls are nice and stiff, and they do have middle detents as well, which is great, we're in the middle position. Gimbals feel good. Adjustable sticks, great for thumbers, which is how I've been flying. It's actually very comfy. You can see why having that extra little nodule thing on the back would actually make it even better for that. But also for pinchers, with the way the radio is laid out, it is very comfortable for that too. Trim tabs, which is great. 3-button navigation, scroll wheel and an enter key. To power it up is standard stuff. You press and hold the power button.
Welcome to Mambo.
And it powers up. Navigation is standard stuff. Press and hold the enter key to go into model select, and then you can select what you need to, and then a brief press on the page key will take you through the model setup pieces, and then a long press on the menu key will take you through the actual radio setup. Press and holding page will actually take you back in the menu. So very standard stuff. If we finish on the bottom, then we have the USB C-style charging port, and we also have the jack out for headphones or whatever if you want to listen to what the radio is telling you. Volume on this is pretty good. I wouldn't use this. I would have preferred that to have been a head tracker myself, some kind of trainer port. On the back we have a full-size JR bay. This was obviously number 5 in the test unit. That means that if you want to add something like a multi-protocol module or even Crossfire and have the best of both worlds, you could. And I'm running mine on standard 18650s, and they give a nice long time on those. Again, you can see the rubber inserts here. These are the ones that were on the test unit. Again, the official ones have kind of a little bump, and I think there's more texture on the radio overall on the final version. Last couple of things we'll check. Let's see how heavy it actually is, because it's a nice weight. It doesn't feel too bad, but it has that weight where it feels like quality, but it doesn't get tiresome to hold. So the overall weight is 654 grams. And I know the other question I'm going to get, so let's do it, is how does it balance on the neck strap? The good thing is it actually balances really well. It sits pretty flat. So if you like neck straps, I do for a lot of my wings, particularly when I'm launching them. This is a great radio. It just kind of sits on your chest, and then as soon as the model is in the air, you can kind of reach down, just grab the sticks, and you are away. So there you have it, introduction to the TBS Mambo. Personally, I think that the team at Team Black Sheep have definitely aimed this at the new pilot or somebody that's maybe wanting to go into TBS TRACER. As I mentioned in that chat with Trappy, if I was starting today, Crossfire probably wouldn't be my first choice. Lots of people are looking around for an alternative modern radio system, and a TRACER is definitely one of those choices. And the fact it's all built in here in quite a nicely put together radio, this would have probably, if I was starting now, been one of the radios on my list to look at. It does obviously have the JR bay as we've just looked at, so you could put a multi-protocol module in here, whatever you needed, a couple of 18650s, and you're ready to rock and roll. So interested to see when OpenTX will be supported in this, and interested to also hear that at the moment there doesn't seem to be any active involvement with the EdgeTX project, but hopefully those guys will be working on a version that will be compatible with this radio too. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Thank you for spending your time today watching that video. You can find me in all the usual places on social media, and if you're trying to learn about a subject, then check out the playlist. All of my videos are organized into easy to follow playlists that, if you're trying to learn a topic, will take you from the basics right the way through to some pretty advanced stuff.